All right, I've got all my pieces cut out that I'm gonna need to make the doors. I haven't made the panels yet, so I've got the rails and stiles, that's what these are. I've got tape in front of them to keep them labeled, because once I start cutting them, I'm bound to forget which is which. So I've got the tape out there to label them. What I need to do now is I need to cut a groove like this into all of the pieces. Some of the pieces, the rails, are going to have to get another cut on the edge to form the tenon, and that's the piece that inserts into the rail, you know, kind of like that. But every piece needs this channel cut into it. Rabbet, groove, I forget the correct terminology, but they all need that. So I'm gonna set up my router table to do that and run every single piece through. And then I'll come back, and the rails, the ones that insert into the tenons, they'll get another cut. So, but let's start first with getting the groove cut. We'll go over to the router table for that. What I'm doing here is I'm setting the height of this router bit. There's a 1/4 inch part of the bit that cuts the groove for the panel to go into. So if you're using 3/4 inch material, it's easy. You divide it into thirds. You put that groove right in the middle of your piece. So you've got a 1/4 inch at the bottom, 1/4 inch groove in the middle, 1/4 inch at the top. My material is not quite 3/4 of an inch. So you'll see here, the bottom is thicker than the top. What I am aiming for here is I want a 1/4 inch of material at the bottom, because that's the face of these pieces. And then I want the groove next, that's another 1/4 inch. And then whatever's left after that is the back of the panel. You want to make sure you have enough to where it's not going to break, because it's holding the panels in place. But if you have less material, that's okay. I've lined all my pieces up. You can see I cut a groove in every single one. They all get that groove. But the tenons only go onto the rails. Now I do have to adjust the height here, because I am using a tenoning jig that you'll see me pull out in a second. That allows you to safely run these pieces through. If you tried to do it without one, you're very likely to get kickback because of the way that you have to orient the piece, like I'm doing here. So be safe, get a tenoning jig like this. It's gonna make your life easier. The key here is that you line up where the tenon goes with where the groove was. If that's not lined up right, the pieces aren't gonna fit together correctly, and they're just not gonna look good. The best way I've found to ensure you get that fit right is to cut extra pieces and then use those as test pieces to set up the fit. All right, now here's the piece that we just cut. Take these things off. Gonna check and see how the fit is. It might look a little funny from the backside, because I did a cut on each side as I was trying to get it right, but there we go. That is perfect. Hopefully you guys can see that pretty good. Well, now I just go ahead and do it to all of the rails, the horizontal pieces. You can see here, sometimes you get these little feathery, splinter pieces. It's not tear out, it's just a little bit of leftover material. I just use sandpaper and knock it down. You want to be careful, because you don't want to, take away that edge and round it over, because they're not going to fit together nicely. Now it's time to make the interior panels. So we're going to go over to our sketch again so we can illustrate this. You don't just take that internal measurement, you need to add the length of your tenon. So whatever tenon length you had from the router bits, in my case 3/8 of an inch, I'm going to add 3/8 of an inch to all dimensions of that center panel. I need to add it to both the width and to the length. Now it's time to make the center panels. I don't have any material wide enough for the center panels, so what I was doing there is I was referencing my notes, looking at the material that I had, and trying to figure out what pieces I wanted to use, because I'm going to need to glue up a new center panel. So I find the ones I want, I cut them oversized at this point. I mill them up to the right dimension, and then it's time to resaw them. This Laguna bandsaw is so good at resawing. It almost has a finish that's just like ready to go straight off of the saw. I don't cut these to 1/4 of an inch here. That's the final dimension I'll need. I cut them proud of that, so I can then take them to the planer and really get a smooth edge, and also so I can sneak up on that final fit. All right, so I just finished up running, well, really one piece. All of them I got roughly to thickness, but I finally dialed it in. I just slowly crept up on 1/4 of an inch every time, checking it with one of my pieces, and look at that. So that's the kind of fit I'm looking for, a nice Not too tight of a fit. Don't want it super tight, but tight enough that like, you know, it's not gonna rattle or anything. It's okay for it to be a little tight, so awesome. Now I just gotta run all the pieces through because I know the machine's set up perfect for the thickness I need, so let's go run the rest of them. After running all those pieces through and getting them to the final thickness, it was time to glue them up. You'll see I put some tape on these just to keep the clamps off of the squeeze out. I don't want to get glue on the clamps if I can avoid it. So that's what that tape is there for. These clamps are pretty sweet. You know, once again, Rockler. I know I'm a bit of a Rockler fanboy at this point, but there's a store close to me and I've just kind of been buying all my stuff from there, honestly. I throw these clamps at the ends there just to help keep everything together. And then it's time to sand it. So we sand all of the pieces because it'd be really hard to sand them once they're inside of the rails and the stiles. So sand them ahead of time and then cut them to their final dimensions. To start, I use the track saw, and you can see I use a square there to get as close as I possibly can. I use the track saw to establish a straight edge, and then I take it to the table saw to cut the other edge. Again, that ensures that this is as square and as parallel as I could possibly get it. Then I take it to my chop saw, and here we go for the fit. So that center panel is cut to final dimension, but what you're going to notice is that my stiles, the long pieces there, I cut them big on purpose. They're too big on purpose so that I can later cut them to final size. You can see me checking the width there though and the height of the rails because those have already been cut to size. So those measurements, I need to make sure that they're spot on. Once I know that the measurements are spot on, everything looks like it needs to, I put finish on the center panels. The reason being is it'd be hard to get finish all the way on these panels once they're inside the groove of the rails and stiles. So if these panels shrink or expand with changes in humidity or temperature, the unfinished portion of those center panels might be exposed and it'd look really ugly. So I finished them ahead of time. Then because I got the finish out, I figured why not put finish on the face frame. You can see that I am taping off sections here. That's where the face frame is going to meet the cabinets. So I want to be able to get some glue in those places, and glue does not stick well to finish. So I tape those off to keep finish off of it. You can see I'm using Rubio Monocoat here. I just really like this stuff. It is a little expensive. However, it's pretty much idiot proof. So I like it for that reason. And it's also just not toxic. So working with it, it's not filling the shops with fumes. I'm not having to wear a mask or anything. It's a very, sort of friendly thing to work with. So I also like that a lot. Plus, it just looks really good. I like the fact that it leaves more of like a natural feel to the wood. So you can, feel the grain still. Now it's finally time to install this thing. So I bring it in, I put glue all over the cabinets, and I fit it into place. And I've already done this like 3 times already, so I know it's gonna fit at this point. Still a little nerve-wracking. Once you put glue on, it's kind of go time. So I get it on there. I use these bandy clamps to hold it in place where I can. And everywhere else, I throw some pin nails in to give it some grab. Then it's time to put the top piece in. I kind of messed up here. I had cut some pocket holes into those vertical pieces there so that I could drill it into the face frame below just to really hold it all together nicely, but I forgot to do it. So I ended up putting it on there. It's got glue. I threw pin nails in and it looked okay. So I'm all right with it. So now what I'm doing is I'm gluing up the panels for the final glue up. You see I use spacers here. Because I cut those stiles oversized, there's no way for me to be confident in where I need the rails to fall on the stiles. So those spacers allow me to get it perfect. So I use the spacers, throw the clamps on, and then pull the spacers out to use on the next piece. So here they are, all glued up. You can see the center panels have finished, but the outsides do not. I remove what glue I can with my chisel here. Then I go ahead and I cut these panels down to final size. So I want my rails and stiles to all be 2.5 inch thickness. That was what I planned on having. So I cut them oversized, and then I used the track saw to cut those down to that final 2.5 inch thickness. What's nice about doing it this way is that you can fine tune the fit when it comes time to put them into the face frames. So I cut one side with the track saw, but then to ensure that the other side is going to be square, I take it over to the table saw, and I use the table saw to cut the other side to 2.5 inches. This is me harping on, again, keeping everything square. I'm doing inset drawers as opposed to overmount drawers, which means that I really need to make sure that everything is perfect, because otherwise the reveals, the gaps around the drawer and the face frame are going to make it really obvious that I didn't keep everything square. When you're doing overmount, you can get away with things being off a little bit, but when you're doing inset, you got to be on your game. Now it's time to cut the rails to size. Ideally, you would use a crosscut sled here and run it through the table saw. I didn't have mine set up yet. I haven't built a crosscut sled, so I had to rely on using the track saw for that. And then it's everyone's favorite thing, sanding. So it's time to do a bunch of sanding. I use my dust extractor again with this fancy hookup so that I can run my hose to my sander. I've got, a retractable power cable that I've got hanging from the ceiling. I just go to town sanding. Then it's time for something I've been really excited to use. This was a birthday gift from my fiance. It's the logo that I came up with for my YouTube channel, and she had it made into a brand for me. A company on Etsy that she went through did this. So I haven't really had a project to use it on yet. So I was really excited to throw this onto the doors. Now don't worry, this isn't on the outside of the cabinet doors. It's on the inside, and I'm just doing one per pair of doors. So you can see there's only 2 panels there that have the brand on it. But it's just a nice little touch if anyone ever wonders who made these. Hopefully, they could find my YouTube channel someday in the future and see not only who made them, but, they could watch this video and see me making them. Now I'm adding those spacers in there for my drawer slides. I'm going to be mounting these on the side, and I need them to be flush with the face frame. What I'm doing here, I know that my door faces are going to be 3/4 of an inch, so I use a 3/4 piece of material to mark where I need to put the drawer slides. This jig here from Rockler allows you to fine tune that, so the number I found was 1/4 inch, and I'm able to set this thing up to 1/4 inch. I had those little measurements on the side. I also throw a measurement inside of the cabinet. I mark it just so I know for sure. But then when you hold this jig up, it keeps the drawer slides perfectly flush and parallel to the ground, and it also puts them at whatever you set that mark to. For me, it was 1/4 inch. One of the more satisfying things is messing with the soft close mechanism. So I always test them, not because I think I need to, but because it's just kind of fun, I think. Now it's time to build the drawer boxes. I'm not going to go super into detail on this. I learned to make drawer boxes from a Bourbon Moth video, so check his channel out. He's got great videos on making drawer boxes. I don't follow exactly his method. I actually use pocket screws for this again. On his, I think he uses brad nails, but the principle is the same. I've got all my pieces out. You can see I'm organizing them again, and now it's time to cut the groove. I'm cutting a 3/8 groove because this is 3/4 material, so I like to go halfway through the material with my groove. Although at the time I don't know it, but I made a big mistake here. I didn't read the directions on those drawer slides that I bought. The drawer slides say that you can only use up to 5/8 inch material for your drawer boxes, and I'm using 3/4 inch material. So I'm in for a rude awakening once I finish these boxes and I go to put them on the drawer slides. Might find out that they don't fit. Luckily, it's only the sides of the box that don't fit. 3/4 is just too thick to fit between the slide and the side of the cabinet. So I end up having to remake all the sides of the drawers with 5/8 material. A bit of a headache, but it's my own fault. You should read directions. Don't just assume because you've done something before with one brand that the other brand's going to be exactly the same, because in this case it wasn't. So you can see here I attach all of my boxes together using pocket screws. Like I mentioned, pocket screws tend to shift the material. You can see here it even does shift a little bit, but using these little clamps here ends up being real useful. Those clamps are made for 3/4 inch material, so when I go back to remake everything, I can't use them, and I end up having to use a series of clamps to hold everything in position. But they're still useful if you're working with 3/4 inch material. Now what I'm marking for here is a cutout that you have to make. I need that removed so that these can sit flat on those slides. So take it to the bandsaw. I set up a little stop block there so I could quickly run all of these through. Some of the things you see me using in this video, some of the jigs, some of the setups, you don't necessarily need. They're nice to haves, not need to haves. The reason I invested in them is I plan to redo my entire kitchen. So having jigs just makes repeatability so much easier. So I'm going to be making a lot of drawer boxes, a lot of drawer faces. So having those tools is just going to make my life easier when the time comes. When I built the shop, I did shaker style doors so I could get practice. This one I'm also doing this way so I can get practice for the real deal, which is the kitchen. Now I used Rockler drawer slides here. Bloom is what you see a lot of people using. They're great. Rockler came out with a similar product to them, and it's a little bit cheaper, so I thought I'd give it a shot. I'll say they feel a little bit cheaper, like the clips there feel a little bit more plasticky and thin, but so far they've held up just fine. You can see that I'm adding some braces here to the bottom just to make these a little bit stronger. They're pretty wide, and it's only 1/4 inch material at the bottom, so I wanted to make sure that they were strong enough. Whenever you're using soft close drawer slides, you got to test them out. It's just satisfying to push them and see them do that. Now I let Ashley know that I had sort of finished building the drawer boxes and everything, and she wanted to take it for a test run. So this is what the design on Etsy was for. You can pull these drawers out. There are collapsible laundry baskets in them. You pop them open, and it just makes transferring laundry from one to the other super easy. Makes pulling laundry in and out of the machine super easy. I've used this myself now since completing the project, and I gotta admit, it's pretty nice. It's definitely a first world problem to worry about bending over for laundry, but it's pretty nice. Next, to attach the drawer faces to the boxes, you saw me put a piece of double-sided tape on there, and then I used playing cards to get the spacing just right. This is another trick that I stole from a Bourbon Moth video, so you're probably wondering, why am I even watching this guy's video right now? I should go watch Bourbon Moth's video. And you know what, I'm making a pretty good point here, but please don't. Please watch my videos, then go watch his. Or vice versa, it doesn't matter. Just please watch my videos. It'd make me pretty happy to get some people watching these and interacting in the comments and all that kind of stuff. So that'd be pretty sweet. Now it's time to attach the hardware. To do this, I remove the drawer boxes. One of the best things about undermount drawer slides is it's so easy to remove the boxes from the cabinet. You just pull these two little clips and pull them out. I'm using a jig once again. That ensures that everything is consistent. So all of your drawers hardware are going to match each other because that jig lines everything up the same every time you use it. Again, when I go to make the kitchen, it's going to come super in handy. Now it's time to add the trim and kind of do just like the final touch-up stuff in here. So this is my first time doing crown molding. I watched a couple videos. They said to put that temporary fence there to hold it at a 45-degree angle if you were going to attempt to cope. I like learning new things. I've never coped before, so I thought, hey, now's the time to do it. So the first pieces get put on just straight cut. You can see those cuts at the end are straight. They're across from each other. But then you cope the pieces that go between and meet up to there. So you set your saw to 45 degree with the trim held on as the way it will sit on the wall. You make your cut, and then it leaves this exposed section that you can easily follow with a coping saw. So you cut that cope at an angle, and only the very front edge touches the other piece. And you can see here you get a really nice fit. You might be wondering, why not just cut 45-degree angles? Well, that works if the corner is 90 degrees. If the corner of your wall is 92 degrees, 93, 88, whatever, it's not going to fit right. And like we saw before, walls are rarely perfectly plumb and square. So that accounts for that. I know I made it look easy there. I wasted a lot of pieces of trim trying to get that right. So I finally got it after wasting like 6 pieces. Now it's time for the hinges. Once again, I invested in a jig here because, like I said, I plan on making a lot of cabinet doors and a lot of cabinet drawers. So I use that for this, but you can absolutely get away without it. And with these drawers done, it's time to move on to the doors. So I do need a spacer for the hinges. I need them to sit flush with the face frame. So the way I did that is I stuck a piece of wood in there. I marked a line so I knew exactly where flush would be. And then I used my bandsaw. So you could see me cutting a piece of plywood there. I double-sided tape my spacer to that piece of plywood, and I run the plywood through once again. I know exactly where the blade's going to go, so I could line up the spacer perfectly to get the correct bevel, I guess you would call it, on here so that it fits well. So after cutting it, I take it inside. Actually, I put some paint on it, and then I glue it in place. Pre-drill, and throw some screws in to hold it in place. Now it's time to put the doors on. So I've already got the hinges on these doors, and what I do is I set my spacing very similarly to the drawers, I use playing cards to get that spacing just right, and then I'm able to lean inside the cabinet and mark where the holes need to go for my hardware. So you see me here drilling out the holes that I marked. Then I can mount the hinge plates, and these bloom hinges are nice because then the hinges just snap on. So I can leave those plates in there, and you see me removing them from the plates here because I need to add the hardware. So put some tape down, mark where I want the hole to be, drill it, throw in the handles, and come back and reinstall these for the final time. These are adjustable as well, so if your reveals aren't perfect, there is adjustability there. You can adjust it up to like a little over 1/8 of an inch, I want to say, because I was able to adjust these and get my reveals exactly how I want them. And time for the final touches, like caulking the seams and filling nail holes. So I caulk the seams where the trim meets. The nail holes, those will get wood putty, so I can sand away the wood putty. The caulk, you don't want to sand that. Get it as best I can, tape everything off, come back with a paintbrush and touch it up. And you might notice the ceiling by now, but we wallpapered the ceiling. I was maybe a little skeptical about this at first, but honestly, I love it. I think it looks awesome. And with that, we are finally done with our built-in project in the laundry room. Well, if you made it this far, thank you for watching the whole video. As you can see, I'm now standing outside of the laundry room. This is the next project, so if you want to see what we're building next, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. What we're going to be doing is building an arched pocket door. So I raised the header up from what the original height was. The door over here is what the height used to be, and I installed this pocket door mechanism. This is just a filler for now so I could mock everything up. When it's done, it's going to be a full walnut arched pocket door. If you got a fancy laundry room, might as well have a fancy door that leads into it. So once again, thank you for watching, and keep an eye out for the next video.